For those of you who don't know, my name is Art Garfunkel. I don't quite qualify as Clint Eastwood. So, being Paul's dad was a big adventure, a 50-year adventure. It was an amazing ride. It was a joy. It was a privilege. It was an amazing blessing. Blessing beyond measure. Can't even speak. It's so amazing. And one of the things that I find so remarkable is the spiritual lessons that Paul taught me. And those spiritual lessons, he didn't teach me because he was so wise and so learned or anything like that, but just because of who he was and how he acted. And those lessons have soaked into me over the course of 40-some years. And I want to share those with you. These lessons I've learned in two different ways. So I've learned them from the words of Jesus as written in the New Testament. So learned them that way, had them demonstrated to me by Paul, and the way that really soaks into me. So these three lessons are, number one, it's simple. It's simple. It's not simple in the sense of 1 + 1, but simpler than that. It's simple. And the second lesson is, it's love. It's purely love. And the third lesson is, it's everything. So, like I say, I learned these three lessons both from Paul and from the words of Jesus. When Jesus was preaching and teaching, there was a man called Nicodemus that came to see Paul. And Nicodemus was kind of a good guy. He was a person who was interested in spiritual things. He was a teacher to the people of Israel. He recognized Jesus' ministry, and he said something good is going on here. And so he went to see Jesus, and when he had this little interview with Jesus after dark, Jesus jumped right into it. He told him the message, and Nicodemus basically said, "Huh? How can that be?" And Jesus went a little further, and Nicodemus says, "I don't get it." And Jesus said, kind of impolitely, "What's wrong with you? You're a teacher of people about spiritual matters. How can you not understand this?" And to Jesus, these spiritual lessons were simple. Jesus would tell parables, and after he told a parable, the disciples would go, "What does that mean?" And Jesus would say, "Are you really that hard to understand?" And all of this is by way of saying, what is the most important spiritually is right in front of us. It doesn't require deciphering, it doesn't require reading a lot of books, it doesn't require climbing the mountain to talk to the guru, it doesn't require any intellectual activity. It just requires spiritual sight. And the most important things in life are right in front of you. Just see them. Paul saw them. Paul understood that people were more important. That love is what you express. That a friendly greeting was effective spiritually in making contact with people. And I saw that demonstrated day after day, year over year, in the way that Paul acted and what he did. So that's the first lesson. It's simple, and it's profoundly simple. Absolutely simple. The second thing is it's love. Jesus taught about love. He taught about God's love. He told a story about, if you people know how to give good gifts to your children, if your son asks you for a fish, would you give him a scorpion? If they ask you for bread, would you give them a stone? Well, no, because that's not love. And Jesus also spoke about God's love as natural and certain, and as a kind of a base that you work from when you talk about spiritual things. So for Paul, it was all about love. Nothing was more enjoyable to him than getting to know a new person. And certain people he clicked with, and certain people he had to work a little harder on. But those that he clicked with, it was amazing. One of the last days of his life, he was in the hospital, he was feeling better, and the nurse started talking to him. It was a nurse named Kelsey. And Paul just lit up, smiled from ear to ear, looked her in the eye, wanted more contact, wanted to learn something about her, wanted to connect with her. This is the basics of love. We who are fully mentally confident don't get that all the time, but Paul always did. And so love was always on his mind, in his heart, what he expressed and what he wanted from you. When Jesus was in the temple one time, it was a little tense because the Pharisees were there and the temple guards were there and the people from the Sanhedrin, and they would challenge Jesus. Said, "What are you doing in the temple? Why are you teaching like this? What's your authority?" And he had a little confrontation there, but that was over, and he went on about preaching and teaching in the temple. I could see his disciples being a little bit tense, looking over their shoulders, saying, "Well, when are the soldiers going to arrest us? When are they going to run us out of here?" But Jesus kept preaching and teaching. At one point, a man came up to him and he said, and this man had been impressed by what Jesus said and thought he was kind of on target and liked what he was talking about. So he wanted to hear more, so he asked Jesus the question, "What's the first and greatest commandment?" And Jesus' reply was, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, and with all your soul. And love your neighbor as yourself." That's a commandment that somehow Paul followed in the way that he lived. I call that commandment the love commandment because it tells you to love twice. And I also call it the cream-filled donut commandment. When I was a kid, I didn't ever have donuts very often. Once in a while I got one. And boy, that's good, you know, that's creamy, it melts in your mouth, that's fat, sugar all together in one package. Good. So I like donuts. And one time I got a donut and I picked it up and I bit into it, and inside of it was a cream filling. And I said, "Wow, I didn't know there were cream-filled donuts." But that's good. The donut's good, the cream filling's good, and that's just double good. And this cream-filled commandment is so essential that we get both parts of that. Love the Lord your God, and in that love, you love others. So you get a double blessing out of that. The final lesson is it's everything. And by that I mean, well, for Paul, people were everything, and making those connections and feeling that love and giving that love was everything to him. That was his life, you know. He'd rather do that than eat. He'd rather do that than play. He'd rather do that than listen to music. All things that he enjoyed, but that was the thing, and that is everything. So when Jesus was preaching and teaching, he said, "Store up your treasures in heaven." He said, "Don't be distracted by the world. Don't put your values over here. Put your values in these essential spiritual things." And that commandment really says that. That commandment doesn't say, take care of business and while you're doing that, love somebody. It doesn't say, build a big house and have a nice time and enjoy your life. And while you're doing that, make sure you understand about love. The first thing you do, the most essential thing you do, is live in that love that God provides and express it to others. And these are lessons that I soaked into me through having that experience with Paul. So, it's simple, it's love, and that's everything right there. There really is a sweet spot for human beings, and I don't think people recognize it. And that sweet spot, that good place to be, is knowing God's love, knowing that it covers you and is present all the time, and then knowing that that love is a resource and a reservoir that you can draw on, so that things that you think you can't do, you can do, because you have that place to draw on it from. Thank you.